Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Demystifying Money podcast. I'm your host, Misty Lynch, and I'm joined by Melana Carbary. She is a private wealth manager with Burning River Advisory Group in Westlake, Ohio, and she helps women. She's another CFP, another woman financial planner, helping us ladies out there figure out our finances and build that financial strength and independence so that we can handle all of the different things that life throws at us. She works with a lot of women in transition, whether they're newly divorced, whether they are contemplating retirement, all of these things that sometimes that financial empowerment, maybe we didn't have the best role model or somebody to speak to, or don't really know what we don't know sometimes. So that's who she helps. So I'm excited to talk to her today and also about her work in financial empowerment for women, because I think it's such an important area, especially for women who feel that they don't have the knowledge or the skills to make good financial decisions at any age, but how we can help women at all stages of their life feel more confident so that they can do more good out there in the world. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and like I said, excited to talk to another female CFP.
This episode of Demystifying Money with Misty Lynch is proudly sponsored by Soundview Financial Advisors. Visit www.soundviewfinancialadvisors.com to learn more.
I'd love to hear more about, how you came into this work. I know this is definitely a line of work that, I enjoy, but how did you get into, what did you think you would be doing, when you first, when you were in college or once you first entered the working world, and how did you land here helping the people that you help today?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, and it loops back into empowering women in a sort of a way. So, there's so many barriers to women in finance, and we think, oh, I wasn't trained in this, and I didn't. Nobody told me how to do these things. So my background, I actually have a degree, an associate's degree in floral design and marketing, and so more of a creative background. And I knew that having an associate's degree wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go in life. And so I stayed in school and got my bachelor's, and I was trying to apply for a job in the floral industry. It's dating myself a bit, but I was required to post my resume on hotjobs.com in order to apply for this job I was trying to get. And in the process of doing that, a company, it was called American Express Financial Advisors at the time, reached out to me and was like, hey, we want to interview you for this potential financial advisor position. And I was like, what? But sort of ironically, it was, or coincidentally, I did have a little bit of an interest, and I thought, oh, if I ever use this business degree for anything other than like the floral, the creative, I would be kind of interested in finance. And so it was just this like really strange kind of coincidence. And I took the interview, and then I took the second interview, and then I took the final interview, and I took the job. And I remember my mom saying to me, Melena, even if this doesn't work out, you're going to learn so much in your first job out of college about how to manage your money for the rest of your life. And she's like, even if the career doesn't work for you, what you're going to learn is going to be with you the rest of your life. And I thought it was such great insight and advice. And so I came into the industry. I was not classically trained in finance. I have a business degree, but much more heavily focused on biology and creative, stuff. So yeah.
I think it's interesting. Finance is something that it touches everything. I don't think there's really any, field that having knowledge when it comes to like financial literacy or how, investing works, anything like that. It helps in so many different ways. So I feel like whenever I, meet people, even if they're entrepreneurs who own, a flower shop or a retail store, I'm like, you own a business, you understand way more than you think, even if you don't think that you understand money or finance or you're good with that. And so I love that, sometimes it's interesting. I know I graduated college in 2002. The job market was not exactly very strong. It was definitely kind of, I was taking any interviews that would come my way. And I think sometimes too, it is important to be open-minded, even if you're in a field that's like adjacent to what you're doing, or just to kind of think of ways that you can make, where ways that things can eventually work out, especially if you have an open mind to it. So that's really cool, I think. And also, I love the creative aspect of all of that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's
Well, I
ways you could
think
loop that into your work, I'm sure, always.
yeah. Well, and I think that so many people think, well, our minds either are creative or they're analytical.
Hmm.
And I know that there are people whose minds work both ways.
Hmm.
But I just think it goes to show that you can be both. And just because you maybe lean creative, doesn't mean you can't learn finance. I am 20 years in this career,
Hmm.
teaching other women about finance. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't classically trained in it. It wasn't the direction I was going for my career.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm
It's an
doing it.
excellent point, though, because I think we do like to think that, especially when it comes to money, that I'm not analytical or I'm a creative, I'm an artist, I'm this. Where saying that, I think a lot of people assume that means that I can't be good at both, or I can't do
Hmm.
both, or that actually, like, it's beneath me to be, analytical or look at the numbers or look at that. And so I
Yeah.
think that, especially for people who are in business for themselves or who are managing a household budget or their finances, you can't opt out of
Exactly.
understanding these numbers and these important things. So I think it is
Yeah.
important to try not to be all or none where you can say, "Oh, I'm good at this, so I'm not creative." Like
Mhm.
there's plenty of ways to be creative even if you are um a math person, but also in
Yeah.
the other respects, like you can't necessarily opt out. So I think that's something, you talk a lot about in your work and online about, finance and psychology. So kind of these different aspects of, you mentioned not being classically trained in finance. And I think that even doing that and learning, you don't learn a lot about the psychology or
No.
the way people think or they make decisions. And it's
Mhm.
interesting because all of us make decisions because we want to feel differently. Our
Yeah.
financial decisions are not because it is the best financial move. Or
Yeah. There's a
nobody would be ordering
motivation.
DoorDash and nobody would be doing all of these things. So, how
Hmm.
do you feel that your perspective on, or your interest in that, the mindset work has shaped the way that you help people interact with money?
Yeah, that's let me think about that a minute. When I came into the industry, it seemed like such common sense. Oh, who
Mm,
wouldn't want to do financial planning?
yeah.
Like, this is going to be so easy. And,
Hmm.
and as you probably know, it isn't.
Yeah.
And so I think the behavioral side, the psychology side, is very interesting because it starts to get at the root of why someone wouldn't want to do financial planning. What are the barriers? What are the roadblocks? There's a lot of shame,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the situation people are coming from or bringing to you. And so I just don't think you can have one without the other. I think you need to address the emotional and the behavioral, the psychological, what's leading to some of these decisions and choices before you can really start to help that person move forward in a productive long-term way financially. And so I think we're both CFPs, so we're trained in the certified financial planning process, that ongoing financial planning model. I think doing that and really getting to know clients through that process and that model of ongoing
Hmm.
relationship, you start to see more the pitfalls of human beings,
Yeah.
right? We all have them. You start to see them, and then you can start to really help them plan with those in mind. How can we set things up to kind of save you from yourself, save
Hmm.
you from your behaviors, from your pitfalls? And so I really, at this point, don't think you can have one without the other. And when I think about building a foundation, for someone to plan from, like you start with the foundation and build up. I think that foundation, you have to address the money mindset
Hmm.
with that foundation, in that foundation.
Yeah, there's definitely it's interesting being in this work because you're right. You'd assume, well, who wouldn't want to do this? And I think there's a lot of people, whether you're a health coach or you're this, like, of course, everybody wants this, but we
Mhm.
are dealing with something that people have definitely, built their feelings around or their thoughts on so much so that they believe that they're untrue, that they're facts, and that you can't, well, obviously, if I have more money, like rich people are this or all of the things that people might think that hold them back or kind of you wonder where these thoughts and beliefs came from. And
Hmm.
we don't spend a lot of time exploring that. We don't spend a lot of time poking holes at the things that we've just heard our whole lives. And so I
Yeah.
think that that's something that's important to recognize when you work with clients, that everybody is going to have something and they might strongly believe it, and it's important to kind of notice that. And as you mentioned, kind of setting things up to keep them from behaviors that maybe they've been repeating. It isn't necessarily just saying you're wrong, that's bad, don't do that, because we'll do things anyway. But it might be, okay, when you get overwhelmed, you tend to, maybe kind of forget about things. So maybe we set things up for automatic payments, or maybe we do things in a different way where you know that you're going to need a break every once in a while, or things like that to kind of help people use their money in a way that helps them build a life. But I think there's definitely a lot of, you know, there's a lot of fears and there's a lot of insecurity sometimes when it comes to women, where maybe they haven't necessarily felt that they were great with money, or they tend to feel like somebody's handled it forever better than them, whether it be a parent or a spouse. How do you help women when maybe they're coming to you because they have to take control of their finances
Hmm.
because they're widowed or they have no choice? How do you help those people who maybe really feel insecure build that confidence?
Yeah. So I think it's a slow process, but just constantly encouraging and walking side by side with that person, having them bring their tablet in or their computer in and helping them set things up. It slows us down. Like
Mhm.
we're not working with this person at 60 miles an hour anymore. We're slowed down to maybe 20 miles an hour and going back to the basics and really just spending time with the client and helping her learn how to do these things for the first time, and telling her that she can do them. You can do this. There's nothing about you that is unequipped to do this. You just are unfamiliar. And so, you're learning something new. And
Hmm.
a lot of times the women who are learning these new things, they're older. And
Hmm.
so they're learning something new on technology as well that they're maybe not 100% familiar with.
Hmm.
So the roadblocks or the barriers, the walls are a little bit higher that we have to help them get through. So maybe we're not only helping them pay a bill, figure out
Hmm.
what bills need to be paid, but they're paying it online.
Yeah.
So there's definitely challenges. I go back to trying to help prevent that from happening. We're always gonna have women who come
Hmm.
into our office who find themselves in this situation. But one of our big goals is to get ahead of that, to try to empower women, no matter what age you are, to start to get involved in your household finances. Even if your husband's always done it, he's done a fantastic job, or your partner's always handled things, get involved, ask to sit down and have them walk you through it. Try to get ahead of that, where you can. And for women that um, you know, maybe don't know exactly that their husband's doing it the
Hmm.
right way. We've had
Yeah.
women say, "Hey, like we're late on our credit card bill, like this
Hmm.
isn't working, and I don't want to take another thing on my plate. But if you're going to take another thing on your plate, this is a good one to take
Yeah.
on. This is your money. It's your financial future. It's your credit score. It's your
Hmm.
bank account. This is a great one to take on." So we try to encourage women to get involved, to try and prevent having that wife, that widow walk in our doors,
Hmm.
taking it on abruptly.
What do you think's causing, or what do you think has kind of, caused women sometimes to have that, to avoid getting deeply engaged in their finances?
Hmm.
Have you like, because I know that this is something that I've never experienced personally, because I always, have been involved in, interested in finance, do it as a profession, felt very comfortable talking, to anybody about it. But I definitely know, like, a lot of people do feel like that is not an area that they want to get involved in. They would rather have their, head in the sand than know what's really going on. Why is that? Why does that feel safer for some people?
Yeah, I think somewhat, we've not been raised to, it's not
Mhm.
been demonstrated to us. I was
Mhm.
very fortunate. I'd be curious to know what example you had set for me, but
Mhm.
my mom handled the finances. I met with a younger than me lady today who is single And she is on top of it. She's doing a great job with her money. And she told me that her mom managed and still manages the household finances. And so I just think there's something with what has been demonstrated to us that matters. So again, going back to how do we get ahead of this, the more women we get who put their hand up and say, hey, I'm going to be involved in this and I'm going to know what's going on. You're setting an example for whether it's your daughters, your nieces, the other women that you work with. We need to show women that you can do this. I'm doing it. You're doing it. So I think that's a big part of it. And I also think, we've been kind of told that money isn't exciting. This is boring stuff. It's an industry built by men to serve men. And only in the last few, maybe the last decade or so, have we really realized, not we've known this, but has the industry realized that, hey, women are inheriting a lot more wealth. Women are holding a lot more wealth. And we need to figure out how to start talking to them. So the industry hasn't been built really to talk to us and to engage us.
Yeah,
so I
no,
think
definitely.
there's a little of both. What's happened at home and what's happened in the world around us.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And, I think that that's something that, we always talked about money in my house because we didn't have any for
Yeah.
quite a while. And so it was like just always talked about, always the arguments. Most of anything that came up that was stressful was based on money, not based on anything else, really. And so I've always been exposed to that. And so good or bad, I never felt like I would just hand those financial decisions off to anybody because I'm like, no, I'm going to make sure that I know where my money is at all times and what it's doing. But I do understand that like a lot of, we don't go back too far to when women couldn't really handle money on their own.
Yeah,
And I do think
we're not that removed
we're
from
not
it.
that
It's
far
pretty
removed.
surprising.
Yeah. So I think now, though, with more women building wealth, inheriting wealth, working, graduating from college, all of these financial decisions, carrying debt, when before you couldn't even really get a credit card before. I think it's 1974. So I get that there's not too many examples, but also I do feel like there is still those stereotypical types of feelings like, oh, well, this is boring, like you said, or this isn't something I want to be engaged in. So I'm glad to see, like, hopefully those things are shifting and that, but I feel like we are, as financial advisors, I still hear training sessions being like, here's a good tip. Look at the woman in the couple and like acknowledge her, ask a question. Like, this is like the top
Oh
tier
my
thing.
gosh.
And you're like, this is ridiculous to me, but I get it. The industry has been very dominated, by wealthy men. And
Yeah.
it's just interesting to see the shift there because I'm like,
Yeah.
women aren't even a target market. We're like half the world.
I know, but they treat us, they have
Like,
segmented us as
yeah,
like a niche market. And it's
yeah.
like, oh my gosh,
You
no.
market to women. Why would you want to narrow your scope that much? I'm like, that's a lot
Yeah,
of
oh
people.
yeah, how crazy.
But it's
Yeah.
weird. And hopefully things are changing. And I do think that, those early conversations are really important. But for somebody who feels like they've been disconnected or overwhelmed, like what do you think are some small, like actionable steps that people can take if they
Mm.
want to start to get more engaged? Even listening to this podcast is one step. This is,
Oh
this is
yeah.
definitely, I feel like the people who have found the show are definitely thinking about money. They're talking about it with their friends, they're getting more comfortable. But maybe if it's now you've consumed and you want to create
Take
or take action, what do
okay.
you suggest that
Yeah.
people do to start?
Yeah. So I love the idea of taking inventory.
Hmm.
Know what you have. And this is one of the steps of the financial planning process. It's the data gathering step. And it's so important because if you want to start to understand what you have, you need to first know what you have. And that doesn't mean you need to understand every statement, every piece of data, every account, but just having an understanding of what are your credit card balances? How much do you owe on your mortgage? What's your 401k at? How much do you earn? Most people cannot tell you what their annual income is. They don't know. Ask them what they're contributing to their 401k, and it's whatever it was when we set it up, and we haven't looked at it since. How's it invested? No idea. So, just simply taking inventory, I think, is an incredible first step. And maybe you break it up. Maybe you pull your bank statements this week, and maybe next week you pull your liabilities, mortgages, car payments, credit cards, and maybe the following week you pull your investments. Got to pull your pay stub in there somewhere
Mhm.
too. You don't need to do it all at once. I know that can get really overwhelming to people. Some women may not even know where to go to find these things, right? So if you have a partner who can help guide you, that's a great place to start. Help me pull these statements. I just need to get familiar with. I want to know what we have. I think it's a great first step. The reason I go there is because first of all, you just know what you have. But I can't believe how many clients have come to us and said, just the simple process of gathering up our stuff and bringing it to you, we found things. We found errors. We noticed this account had a beneficiary that was my ex-husband on it. So it's just bringing awareness.
Yeah. No, and I think
And
that that's such an important first step. And like, even when I try to be, I was talking to somebody and they were like, all right, let's get like a couple action items. What are some tips that we can use in a news report? And I was like, this is it. Awareness is number one. No matter what we are trying to do, we have to understand where we are right now. There's no skipping it. There's no skipping to, okay, let's
yes,
fix the investments.
yeah,
We don't know
no.
if you're putting enough in there. We don't know how much you have. Maybe you should be paying down something first. Like you have to know exactly where you stand, even if it's awful, even if it is not fun to look at. It's still better to know your credit score, even if it's something you want to change. If you don't know what it is, then you're going to find out when someone else tells you.
hmm And
That's
probably
not
when
fun.
when you need it, when it's
You
too
need it.
late.
Hmm.
If you're in divorce, if you're widowed, if you find yourself suddenly having to take over or manage this stuff on your own, that's not when you want to be finding out that you have $10,000 in credit card debt and a bad credit score.
Yeah, those are not the times. It's the times when like you have some space, when you have a little bit of, when it's calm. It's the same as like when people should be updating their resume. It's like when you're not under stress or under pressure trying to get things done.
Yeah.
Because I think when you do want to make changes, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't make changes in their life because they're not sure if they're financially able to. And this could be um leaving a job that they don't like. This could
hmm
be leaving a relationship that's no longer serving them well. This could be all sorts of things. And we blame money.
hmm
We blame money because it's easy to point to that and say, okay, well, if, if we don't really know our numbers, we don't know what we have, what we can use, um, our brains will just keep us alive, which means not changing. Even if we're
Exactly.
not happy,
Exactly.
like we
Status
won't, we won't
quo.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've seen
And
that so much where having women be um, made aware of their situation. And to be honest, it's been a lot of good and some bad, um, to where it can help inform the next steps,
Mhm.
versus making those steps blindly
Yeah.
and with a lot of uncertainty. There's always going to be uncertainty with any major change that you make. If you can remove a little bit of that
Mhm.
uncertainty through becoming aware of your financial situation and how that impacts these decisions. I think there's a lot of power in that. And I think it's a great way for women to take back some power. I think sometimes to your point, we stay in jobs, we stay in
Mhm.
relationships because there's an imbalance.
Mhm.
And that doesn't have to be that way. And as you were talking, I thought of another challenge that I think women face, and I just think it is the burnout, the feeling
Mhm.
overwhelmed, the already having so much stuff on our plates. And I think men tend to be more drawn to the financial stuff, and as their role models maybe have more demonstrated, hey, that's what you do, you manage the money. And so I think it's an easy one for women to get off of our plates.
Yeah.
But easy isn't always right. And so I want to acknowledge that
Mhm.
when we talk about this stuff, we're often asking women to maybe bring something back on their
Mhm.
plate when they already feel totally tapped out and like they can't take on one more thing. This isn't the thing to not take on.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you're right. And I think there are a lot of things that, women can feel overwhelmed doing. And a lot of times there's certain things, even when it comes to, childcare or being a primary caregiver for somebody in your life that is financially not rewarding. It's
Hmm.
completely time consuming and stressful. But I think that all of these things, like we've talked about traditional roles, they land on a lot of women's plates. And so it is very expensive. However, that's where I do feel like sometimes the financial conversation can come in because what can we pay for to get off of your plate?
Yes,
What can we
yes.
outsource that you don't enjoy doing? Maybe it is buying back some of your free time or your energy or paying for someone to clean or provide a meal or some sort of care if you are now in this situation that's kind of been, you know, piled on to you and you need to figure out if you don't think some people I feel like they have more financial means available to them than they realize and
Hmm.
could outsource something. Maybe they don't feel good about it. Maybe they haven't even thought about it. But I do feel like sometimes when you understand where the money is, or you might say, I don't want to have my children have to take care of me. Like, you have to start saving for the future.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're right. There's absolutely a lot of overwhelm and burnout that we're seeing. That sometimes, again, money gets blamed, but no one's looking at the money to make sure that that's actually really the cause.
I love that. I'm so glad you said that because we've seen that within our own practice. And I'll tell you what, I was leaving my condo this morning, and the lady that lives across the hall from me is fantastic, and she's a housekeeper. And I was like, I really want to ask her if she could just come clean my condo like every other week, just do a
Hmm.
deep clean. And you know what? I felt extreme
Hmm.
guilt and shame that I like, why? Why can't my place isn't even big? Like, why
Hmm.
can't I just do this? Maybe it's less about why, if you chop your day up, you're like, there's plenty of hours in the day. It becomes an energy question. Is there the
Hmm.
energy to do it? And
Yeah.
do I want to? At the
Yeah.
end of the day, I have to pick and choose
Hmm.
how and where I spend my energy. And to your point, if there are resources, not everyone has the resources, but if there are resources that can allow you to pick and choose and get some things off of your plate, and maybe it doesn't even cost money to get off your plate.
Hmm.
Maybe it's simply asking for help,
Yes.
asking your mom, asking your sister, asking your best friend for a little bit of help.
Hmm.
We're not good at that either as
Hmm.
women. I think we just try to keep doing everything until we're, like I said, totally burnt out and fried.
Yeah.
And then, not maybe prioritizing the right things where we should be spending our time.
Yeah. No, it's great that you mentioned that guilt and that feeling because it's so normal. It's so like there are a lot of things that I can do
Hmm.
physically that I don't want to do, I don't like to do. But, I've reframed all of that because we have, house cleaning has never been my favorite thing to do or my husband's, never. Um, but when we had, things like childcare costs dropped off when they went into school. We had
Yeah.
some room in the budget, some things so we could
Yep.
say, okay, we can direct this somewhere that will make us feel better and happier and stuff. And I love supporting small businesses. So in my mind, I'm
Hmm.
hiring somebody who's running like your neighbor who is working and,
Yep.
creating
She's self-employed. Yeah.
self-employed and I love it.
Yeah.
So that's on brand, that tracks for me. But I do understand, that like it can feel like, well, if I'm physically capable of doing it, I should do it. But that just adds to the burden of the things that you should be doing that you're not doing. So unless you really schedule out what your time is and when you can accomplish these
Hmm.
things, there are some things, you know, even, being I could do my own bookkeeping, but I don't. I'd rather spend time with clients. I feel fine about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be curious to know how you worked through some of that guilt because I do think it is something that a lot of women um,
Yeah.
deal with and don't work through, don't find
Yeah.
their way through it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like I've there's a lot of like guilt and shame and things that we could feel, but I feel like I've always, when I think about business and I think about my time and my energy, I value that as well. Um I do think that I've never been prone to burnout. I've
That's
never
nice.
been like, I don't like feeling too overwhelmed or too stressed, but I was also raised by a father who was self-employed, who didn't probably could have worked a lot harder. We might have been in a different financial situation if he did take on a little bit more stress and a little more anxiety. But I've kind of seen the guilt. I've seen it. I understand the guilt trip. I understand, the things that like, oh, you should do this, you should be perfect, you should look this way and that way. And, oh, what is your husband going to do for dinner if you're traveling for work? And I was always like, what do you mean? He's going to feed himself like he has for the past 30 years of his life before he knew me. Like, so I've always been like, this with the guilt trips. I've always pushed them away. I've always
Good
kind
for
of decided
you.
that I feel like that's kind of just the way that I was wired. And I know that it can sometimes, I think it could sound really selfish. It could sound like I do a lot of things that I feel like, personally benefit. I have more free time. I like my schedule. I like my life a lot. Um, and I have had help in certain areas, but I've worked hard for that. And it's a trade-off. I think
Hmm.
there's certain things that like you you have to decide proactively what you want to do with your money and your time. I like to spend more time with my kids. Sometimes that might mean paying somebody else to, you know, shovel the driveway or do other things that I can. And I realized that, you know, if the money situation changed, I know what I would cut first. But
Hmm.
as long as other things are going on in the background, I feel confident that I could continue on. So I don't have that financial stress of like, oh, what if this should be going somewhere else? I've lived with financial stress. I understand what it is like to not have those choices to be able to outsource anything. However,
Hmm.
like you said, there are certain things that you can do with what you've got. And I think
I
awareness
agree.
comes into play there. And I think that's where
Yeah.
people can say, yeah, I'm not exactly where I want to be right now, but when I am, these are the things that I would like to do. These are the places I'd like to visit or the things I'd like to stop doing and having a
Yeah. The
plan
things
for
I want
that
to
as
get
well.
off my plate.
And
Yeah.
knowing that, I feel like when you do get to those points, you get a raise, it doesn't just disappear. You say, I don't know where it
Hmm.
went, because it's just going to whatever's on fire right now. Being very intentional with where that stuff goes is super important. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think, sometimes you have to be like a ninja when it comes to those guilt trips and like be onto yourself. Like, oh no, wait, that's not true. Why am I thinking that thought? Why did that pop in why am I guilty right now? And like you
Hmm.
recognized it
Yeah.
when you were
Yeah.
thinking about it. I could clean my
Hmm.
condo. It's not that much. It's not going to take that time. When like honestly, you
Yeah.
saw her and immediately were like, yes.
Yeah. Like,
I would
why?
say get curious when those things come up. Find out how much it costs. Maybe it's less than you think.
Hmm. Yeah.
A lot of us
Yeah.
overestimate how much everything's going to cost. Oh, estate planning, I can't do that. It's going to be so expensive. Oh,
Yeah.
life
Or how
insurance, I
much
can't do that.
time it's going to take.
So yeah, totally. We're actually like finding your statements, figuring out like your interest rates might take you 30 seconds if you open your
Yeah.
app and know where to look.
I can't believe the roadblock that gathering data.
Hmm.
So that like coming back to knowing what you have, taking inventory, I can't believe the roadblock that is for people. But we're like this in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like we make it a bigger deal in our heads. And then
Hmm.
once we get started, it's like, oh my gosh, that took me a half an hour.
Yeah. No.
It just didn't take, it wasn't what I thought it was. And
Mhm.
so getting started, to your point, getting out of your own way is so important.
It is really important. And I think sometimes we could spend like a half hour overthinking something that will take us 5 minutes. You
Oh
just have to
yeah.
do it instead.
We put more effort into
Mhm.
procrastinating and avoiding it than it would
Yeah.
take to do the task.
Yeah. And so that's where I think having a third party does sometimes help because I feel like if somebody might, maybe if it's just you trying to get everything together, maybe you'll think of all these other things that I should clean my house instead. I should do this because I have 5 minutes of free time instead of being she wants this from me. I have to put it in the portal. I have to log in and provide it by our next meeting. People get stuff done when they have a
Hmm.
deadline. And so
Hmm.
sometimes being your own boss when it comes to this stuff, if you decided you want to take ownership, put a meeting on your calendar and pretend like someone else cares that you get there and do the stuff because it can be tough to put these things off. But a lot of times you might find, okay, if I cancel these subscriptions that I don't use, I
Hmm.
could have somebody come clean my place once every other week. That money's going
Yeah.
out already. It's
Yeah.
just not going somewhere that
Yeah.
serves you. So,
And until you take that inventory and really know what's going where and what you have, it's hard to know what you can do.
yeah, no, definitely. That you just won't know. You'll
Yeah.
just assume you can't.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just
Yeah.
definitely how things go. I'd love to hear more about Burning River, about your firm's mission and what you're working on, because you mentioned earlier that you have some initiatives to really help people with empowerment. I can't tell you how much I think the mindset you can't get, you can get kind of far hating your way through this stuff and beating
Hmm.
yourself up and bullying it, but I don't feel like success and real security and peace and joy comes until you fix that mindset piece. So tell me more about your mission with empowerment.
Yeah. Yeah. So Burning River Advisory Group is our financial planning firm that is it's our bread and butter, so to
Mhm.
speak. And we are limited, probably like you are, in terms of the number of people that we can work with. We have opportunity for growth. We are not at capacity,
Mhm.
but we realize that we cannot work with everyone. And so we have a lot of knowledge, though, and so much experience and a willingness and desire to want to help beyond just the people who will be able to work with us directly. And so from that, we created a company called Enlighten Her, and it's an educational arm um, it's not really of Burning River, it's a separate
Mhm.
company, but it's education focused, female, women driven. I think the tagline is a women first educational company. And so we're trying to empower women. We're trying to get to women out of college, maybe get to women in college,
Mhm.
women starting their first jobs, women who are coming out of divorce or who are going into divorce, trying to empower them at these, early stages or transitional stages with education and information. And it is a lot of mindset type of uh, education.
Mhm.
You need some tactical things, right? You need some good ideas and sort of the how-tos. But to your point, a bunch of how-tos without bigger context
Mhm.
doesn't really get us there.
Yeah.
It's like working out without having a bigger goal of
Mhm.
like I want to live a long, healthy life and stay mobile well into my later years.
Mhm.
That's the vision that makes it easier to get up and exercise. So it's the same with finances. If you don't have like the vision of like kind of the bigger picture, what am I working towards? Kind of changing my mindset around money, the tactical things aren't going to stick for very long. That's our approach. And so at Burning River Advisory Group, we talk a lot about values-based spending, breaking old money myths that aren't serving
Mhm.
you, empowering women. And Enlighten Her is really an extension of that, but we're doing it under an umbrella where we can hopefully touch more people, reach more women.
Yeah.
And so we're super excited about it
Yeah.
and hoping that we can start to help women embrace money, view it differently, break down some of those barriers and say, "Hey, I can do this." It's maybe not second nature, but it's not uncomplicated.
Mhm.
I went to school. I went
Yes.
to college. I learned a bunch of new things. No matter
Mhm.
your path in life, you've learned a
You
bunch of
learn
new things
something.
along the way. You
Yeah.
can learn this too.
I love that. And I think it's so important. And I think, for all the, everybody, if this it helps everybody, period.
Yeah.
Having, even like I think about my son, having, him having a mother who is financially stable and can that, I think that there's so many things that help when everybody is financially. It's just the fact that a lot of us weren't raised to say, hey, I want to go out there and make a lot of money. Where, my husband might have been like, yeah, buddy, go get it. Where I would be like, what? That's like, why don't you like tone it down a little bit? Just to kind of level the playing field. And it's okay to want to go make money, invest money, spend money, and not feel like you have to do it for someone else's benefit or feel bad about it or guilty or shameful. So I think that that's so important because I think everybody benefits when we're all kind of on this level playing field. Like, hey, we're gonna have to work with money. And a lot of people who haven't before or they don't think they're good with money spend some every day, make
Oh
some every
yeah.
day, are doing something every single day that relates to it. So they're in a better position than they think. They just maybe need their brains maybe need to catch up and kind
Hmm.
of figure out how to actually do that in a way that feels really intentional and good. So I love
Hmm.
the work that you're doing. I think it's so important. And I think, yeah, the earlier we catch people to try to help them think about things, and it's hard. You can't reach everybody. You can't work with
Yeah.
everybody, or else we would have no capacity. There's so many people out there that need help. So the ways that we can help one to many are so important and
Yeah.
super valuable.
Yeah.
How can people find out more about you if they'd like to learn
Mhm.
more about your educational or your or Burning River?
Yeah, so you can find us online. Burning River, the website is burningriveraag.com. And so you can find us online. And when I say us, it's myself and my business partner, Ed Vargo. And we both work in one practice, one set of clients. So, I just read a statistic the other day. I can't remember where it was from, but it was talking about women in finances and how there's just still such a shortage of women seeking financial guidance and receiving the guidance that they're looking for. And I thought it was really interesting. And I actually always felt like it was one of our edges in working with women was that there's a woman and there is a man in our practice. And this article said as much. They said, don't assume because they're women that they want to work with a woman. I think that there's a time and place where we look for both. There's different things that we each bring. Anyways, so burningriverag.com and then Enlighten Her. So if you're more interested in that educational side, we're putting out free content. We're putting out some low cost content. We're doing webinars. That's enlightenher.com. So, both ways. And you can reach us through those websites. So if you wanted to reach out through Burning River or through Enlighten Her, there's contact pages on both of those websites.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that take advantage of this. I think sometimes there's all this information, and even if you're getting something that, maybe it's free or it's a webinar, maybe it's just takes sometimes hearing something differently or reading it and thinking about things in a different way. And this could be, a lot of the content that, experts like you are putting out is great content. It's just a matter of you want everyone else to see it. This is not gatekept. This is more information that we feel like should be in the hands of everybody. Take advantage of these things. You really don't know. You might say, oh, working with a CFP is too expensive. This is one way to do it. Listen to the show, download your content, get these webinars, because really, we just want to help more people get to the point where they feel like, okay, now I have this much wealth saved. I need to talk to an investment or I need to talk to a planner. That's the goal for everybody. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you everyone for listening. If you're looking to listen to more episodes of the show, or maybe you want to buy a copy of my book, Demystifying Money, to kind of go over some of the more of the mindset work and some of the journal prompts we have in there, please head over to mistylynch.com. I would love for you to visit and catch up on some of these episodes. Thank you so much for providing all the information you shared today, and we'll talk again next week. Don't forget to share with friends and family, and together let's demystify the world of money. Knowledge is the key to financial empowerment.